If you're running a consultancy business but struggling to get clients consistently, this video could change everything. I'm going to show you the single most powerful shift that enabled me to achieve an 877% improvement in my sales results. That might be hard to believe, but it's true. And in this video, I'll show you how you can do it too. Most consultants unknowingly create pressure in sales conversations, and clients feel it immediately. The big shift is to stop selling with pressure and start selling with power. When you make this shift, you'll be treated differently in sales meetings. Instead of having to prove your worth, you'll have clients leaning in, wanting to know more. You'll probably find that you'll stop having to compete on price and stop having to waste time writing proposals that don't convert. Stick with me as I unpack this power selling system, because this one change could transform the way you sell forever. There are two processes involved in getting new clients. And the first is getting leads or getting opportunities to sell in the first place. And then the second process is about converting those leads into clients. What I see most consultants doing in trying to attract new clients right from the start of the process in generating leads is creating a subtle pressure in the sales process or in the marketing process itself. And that pressure comes from promotion of their services, promotion of their credibility, promotion of what they do, that is about trying to sell their services, trying to persuade the potential client that what you do is of value to them and that they need your services. And when we go about selling ourselves and our services in this way, promoting ourselves and our services, it is creating pressure that potential clients resist. Now, with the power selling system, the first part of that process is positioning yourself as the authority. So the P stands for position yourself as the authority. So what reduces that resistance from our potential clients when we try to promote ourselves? When we position ourselves as the authority, we remove that pressure. We're not trying to sell ourselves, but we're trying to flip the switch so that instead of hunting for our clients, instead of promoting ourselves and trying to find clients, we're actually attracting clients in a way that removes all the pressure from the process and removes pressure from any sales situation we get into. Let me jump in here and interrupt the presentation so that I can let you know that we have a complete training around the system that I call the Strategic Authority Marketing System. And you can get access to that training by clicking on the link that's listed in the description below this video. So if you want to learn how to have sales presentations with people who have already been pre-sold and have already been shown through your marketing content that you are the authority in your field, then click the link below in the description to get access to that training. Now back to the presentation. Even when we get into a sales conversation, most consultants jump to the sales mode too quickly. They jump to offering a solution before it's really time to do that and before it's appropriate. And any time that you start to suggest how you can help your clients in a sales situation before the client is ready for that, again, creates pressure. So we want to remove pressure by changing the way that clients perceive us in that sales process. And mostly with marketing generated leads, when we get into a sales process or a sales conversation, we feel like we have to prove ourselves. And our clients often convey that because they want to know how we can help them. They want us to demonstrate to them why they should invest in our services. So we often feel the pressure to deliver that convincing argument or the compelling reason why they should buy our services. But we want to flip that and almost get to the point where the client has to prove themselves to us. The client has to prove to us that they will be the right client for us, that they're a good fit for our process, for our program, for our services, that they'll be a good client for us. And the way to do that is in that initial phase of positioning yourself as the authority. Because when you get into a sales conversation where the client already sees you as the authority, their whole demeanor towards you changes. Instead of asking you to prove yourself, you've already done that before you get into a sales meeting, ideally. But even if you don't, even if your marketing process isn't mature enough or well developed enough yet to get you into sales conversations where you are positioned as the authority, you can create authority positioning in another way. And that is by offering your clients, when the sales meeting is being set up, whether it's an incoming inquiry or an outbound lead, before you get into that sales meeting, you want to deliver something of value to your client that positions you as the authority. And when I first started off, this was by just sending my client an article that I'd written, a 2-page article that was totally educational. It was not at all promotional. We've got to remove promotion from our process. It has to be all about positioning. So you can do that quickly before a sales meeting by sending an article that offers real value, that educates your client about their problems, what will happen if their problem is not solved, the implications of that for them, the cost to them of not solving their problem, and the process they need to go through to solve their problem. Now, when you can present your client with an article like that, it creates credibility, and in a way that is much greater than when you send your client a promotion about your experience, your credentials, your expertise that is just talking about you. When your client sees that you understand them and their situation and that you have a proven process for solving their problem, your credibility is enhanced much more than any self-promotion can ever achieve. So that's the first step of the power process, positioning yourself as the authority. The second step, O, for own the agenda, applies when you get into that sales meeting. When you enter that sales meeting with your client, you've got to own that agenda right from the start. You don't want to give the potential client an opportunity to take control of the meeting. And often we default to that by coming into the meeting, allowing the client to run the agenda. We go into a meeting and hand over control to them by saying, well, how can I help you? When we do that, the client will often tell us what their problem is and suggest that, well, they ultimately and often tell you the solution they want you to provide. So, for example, a potential client might invite a business coach to come into a sales meeting, and it's maybe a discovery session or however that's been framed or set up. And the coach might enter that meeting and say, well, how can I help you? And the client will say, we need a business plan. Tell us about how you're able to help us with that. Now, immediately, you've lost control. If you're that business coach and the client's asked you to tell them how you can help them create that business plan, you're now having to explain how you do things, how you work with a client, how that might help them. Now, when you own the agenda, you flip that totally around the other way. Instead of being put into the position of having to talk about yourself and how you approach it, you want to go through more of a diagnostic process in the first place. You want to flip it so you're telling the client how that meeting is going to be run. You're going to tell them your agenda and tell them about the fact that in this meeting, most of the focus is going to be on them and their situation. And if you see that there's an opportunity to help, then you will tell them about your process and how you can help them. But that has to be the final step in the process. So own the agenda, get into that meeting and take charge, take control, and tell them how you're going to run the meeting. The third step is to win their trust. And often when we go into sales meetings, there's skepticism from the potential client. They don't really know you well. They don't know how you can help them. They don't know if you are credible or trustworthy. So it's really important to win their trust. And again, this is about flipping the normal approach. Instead of trying to sell them on your service and talk about what you do and how it's beneficial to them so that you can persuade them that they should invest money with you, you've got to flip that around and win their trust by, first of all, showing that you understand them and their situation. And we do this like a doctor runs a diagnostic session. When you go into an appointment with a doctor, the doctor takes charge and they may ask you initially, well, how can I help you? Or really, what's wrong? Why are you here today? But then they will talk about, okay, well, let me do some tests. Here's what I want to do to find out more about that. So rather than being in a situation where the doctor comes in and often, potentially this is what could happen when you enter a doctor's appointment. You might say, well, doc, I've been having headaches for the past few days. Can you write me out a prescription for some strong painkillers? I'm sure that's all I need. Now, if the doctor does that, they're potentially setting themselves up for a malpractice suit, because you would not expect your doctor to just give you what you want. And that's how we need to apply winning the trust of our clients and running our sales meetings. We need to run that like a doctor runs their appointments with patients. We need to win their trust by saying, let me ask you a few questions so that I can get a better understanding of your current situation and what's going wrong for you. So conduct a diagnostic process. Make sure that you go in prepared with some questions that you should be asking about your client's problem. And if you've done your marketing correctly, you're in a situation with a client who has the problem that you typically solve. So it's not a surprise. They're not going to come up with a problem that you're not prepared to deal with. So be prepared to have questions about the problem that you solve in terms of, how does this problem impact you? What is the evidence that you actually have this problem? How extensive is this problem? How costly is the problem? What happens if you don't solve this problem? How urgent is it that you solve this problem? Now, when you ask questions like that, you're not only showing the client that you understand their situation, but you're getting so much more information about the link between your solution and their problem. And you're also helping your client to understand that you are an expert in what you do, because when you ask intelligent questions, the client automatically understands that you have expertise in this matter. You link your expertise to the questions you ask, and the client builds trust in you because you seem to know what you're talking about and know what you're doing without ever having told the client about how you can solve their problem yet. So you'll win their trust through deeper diagnosis, showing you understand, and gaining intelligence, if I can put it that way, gaining information about their solution, so that then you can educate your client as step 4 in the process, the E part of power, educate. So we've got to move from the problem to the solution. And here we want to educate our client about what the solution looks like, or particularly what the outcome is about. Here, what is the ultimate outcome they're looking for? So shifting from the problem to the outcome is about educating a client about what's required to achieve the outcome they want. And that is about often what is best practice in your industry or in your profession. What was the best practice that they should be moving towards in the way that they operate? So when you can educate them around what best practice is, you can move them from the problem to the solution and have them really primed to want to know what your solution is, because they want that ultimate outcome they're looking for. When they can see what that future looks like for them, what the ultimate outcome is, and what it takes to achieve that, they can then be really in a position of saying, well, that sounds like exactly what we want. How can you help us? And when you get that question at that point in time, then you can move to the final step of recommend. And when you recommend your solution, again, you have removed all the pressure from the sales situation, and you have your clients leaning in, wanting to know your solution. They already want your help at this point. They want that outcome that you've promised them. They want someone to help them, and by now they see you as the authority in what you do, and they want your help. So when you recommend your solution, if you do that in a way that's authoritative enough, in showing confidence that you have got their back, you understand what they need, and that your process or your solution is exactly the best fit for them, then more often than not, by the time you present that recommendation, they will say, that sounds like exactly what we need. When can we start? And more times than not, in my presentation of that process, that's the result, is when can we start? And we don't need proposals. We don't even have competition. So when we have that agreement at the end of our sales meeting, we move straight ahead into starting work or scheduling when that work's going to start with our clients. So it changes the whole dynamics of how our sales meetings go. And I'm sure that's ultimately what you would like to have in your sales meetings with potential clients, so that you can win sales much more easily, but also you can achieve sales much more consistently and predictably, and you have new clients coming along more regularly in your process. Now, before I made this shift in my sales process, I was entering sales conversations on the back foot all the time, thinking that I had to prove myself, I had to persuade a client how to work with me. And that pressure that was created in those sort of sales meetings meant that my sales results were pretty dismal. And I was just getting started in consultancy and doing this. And the first year of trying to sell in the typical traditional way meant that my sales results were one success out of every 13 sales appointments. Now, that was pretty disastrous, and maybe that's worse than your sales results are at the moment. I wouldn't expect that too many people would survive if that's the sales results, but being persistent, I kept pushing through and learned how to do this better. So when I made the shift from pressure selling to positioning myself as the authority and using the power selling system, within about a year, my sales results were now 2 out of 3. So making that shift makes a huge difference, removing pressure from your sales conversations and your sales methodology, even through your marketing process, to operating with power. It really changes the whole dynamics in your sales process. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully you can understand the difference that selling with power makes and how it changes your client's perception of you going into the sales meeting so that you can sell with confidence, you can sell with authority, and you can sell without selling. And really, that's the big shift. You don't need to sell when your clients see you as the authority and when you use the power method. You just need to help your clients understand the process that they're going through, understand what it is they want, understand that you have a solution for them, and then they're willing to buy without all of the normal competition, proposals, any of that, more times than not. So my recommendation to you is stop promoting yourself and start positioning yourself as the authority and selling with power. So in the next video that you'll find a link to just here, I'm going to show you the biggest myth about selling consultancy services that's costing you clients and show you how to fix it so that clients come into the meeting already pre-sold, wanting your help. You won't want to miss that one.